If you've ever labeled your child as explosive, strong-willed, sensitive, or angry, we have created a course that is here to support you. Our brand new anger course is now available for purchase. It's available right now. You're going to get 35 video lessons between 1 and 4 minutes long that are practical, insightful, useful, and based off of what real parents were asking us for when it comes to angry kids. It's available right now. It's brand new. We cannot wait to support you with this course. Head to the link in the show notes to grab it.
Welcome back, Jessica.
Oh, thanks.
Today's episode is sponsored by, no, just kidding, not sponsored by. We had another email sent. What? What's so funny?
Keep going. This is a really good intro.
We had, yeah, you said the last time the intros were boring.
Okay, go.
Okay.
Welcome to Robot Unicorn, hosted by my parents, Jess and Scott. I hope you enjoyed the episode.
We have received an email from someone named Ashley, who's a new listener and a mother of 2 sets of twins, 4-year-olds and 2-year-olds. And Ashley wrote in about the challenges of sibling play, which I'm going to imagine are slightly amplified just because of the fact that she has
4 kids at the same, 2 of them at the same ages. Yeah, that's a lot.
4 kids under 5. Yeah. And she was just saying, while she understands the importance of play, she finds it frustrating and seemingly impossible to manage with her 4 children.
Yep.
Her main struggles are finding activities that engage both the toddlers and the preschoolers at the same time, and managing the dynamic where the 2-year-olds often destroy, that's the word she used, destroy, the older children's crafts and toys. And this leads to constant fighting and frustration for everyone, making independent play difficult to achieve. So Ashley was just asking for tips or an episode on the topic of sibling play between different ages, and more specifically, the unique dynamics of twin play. Mm-hmm. Which I think we can touch on a little bit, but I mean, there's just going to be challenges with that many children of those age.
Yeah, I think we'll talk about siblings and the play, because as soon as you have that many children with immature brains in a room together, it is kind of a recipe for fighting. Everything we've talked about on this podcast, which listen to our impulse control episode if you haven't already, that would be a really nice episode to listen to kind of give you a framework for what we're going to talk about when we talk about siblings. I think the impulse control one would pair really nice with this one.
Mm-hmm. So some of the things I was thinking about for this episode were related to sharing, and if it's even possible for kids of those ages to get along consistently yet. And I was just finding that research actually strongly advocates against forcing 2-year-olds to share.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting. I feel like you've said that before, but it didn't click until now. And the research was suggesting it's actually developmentally inappropriate to expect a 2-year-old to share. However, I think a lot of parents emphasize early sharing as being very important to them. So I guess my question is, what difference would there be in showing children to share earlier versus not pushing children until they're developmentally, quote unquote, ready?
I mean, yeah, the idea of sharing, basically what you're asking a child to do is say, this thing that you love, that your brain is going to get stuck on, that's the most important thing in the world to you at this moment, because that's how a toddler's brain works or a child's brain works. I want you to give that up to this other person who also wants this thing and it's going to love it as much as you do in this exact moment without knowing when you're going to get it back. Well, what happens to a child? Like, imagine the thing you love most, you had to give it up. You might be like, well, the child doesn't love this most. They don't care about this item. In this moment, that's all they can think about, right? So we have to understand a toddler's brain, it's stuck. This is the only thing I can think about. And now this tiny kitty cat that I got in a Kinder Egg toy is the most important thing in the world to me. Nothing else matters. That is true to them. Even though we know that that's not actually true, in that moment, that's true to them. So what we're asking a child to do when we're asking them to share is asking them to be logical and reasonable, which we know toddlers can't be. They don't have that skill set yet. And we're asking them to be calm and to give this thing up without knowing when they're going to get it back, which also is not something that they have the ability to do. So just from a developmental perspective, we need to understand what we're truly asking a child to do when we're asking them to share.
So it's a bigger deal than just
Share.
Just share the toy because you're going to get it back in a few minutes anyway. Don't worry about it. You're saying it's a much bigger deal.
Yeah, you're asking them to do something that's very logical and makes a lot of sense when their brain is not logical and doesn't make sense of these things very easily, right? That's not to say they shouldn't share their toys. They shouldn't be able to take turns. It's just to say that if you're just yelling across the room, hey, share that toy, your sister had it first, it's just not going to work for you. It's going to backfire. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to then send them to timeout. Then they're, it goes back to all these unrealistic expectations that we have on our kids.
Well, and there was actually a strong emphasis in some of the research and articles that I was reading on providing special toys for kids actually that don't need to be shared with anyone. Now, in families with limited resources or space, do you think that's practical? And I think more importantly, does this approach actually teach children that some possessions are more important than relationships and potentially starting to foster materialism or entitlement like they're owed?
Here's how I'd set up a sharing system in your house. And again, this is not going to be perfect. But basically what I would say is all toys are shared, except for, each child maybe has their special stuffy. Our kids all have their special stuffies. Those are yours. Like it's your one thing, you sleep with it. Maybe a couple things, something they got for their birthday. It can be in their room or in their dresser, and they get to play with it when they want. And their siblings are not allowed to just grab it and play with it without permission. And if they do, the parent intervenes. We don't say, oh, share it. No, the parent intervenes, takes the toy away from like the 2-year-old who's now grabbed their sister's special toy, gives it back to the person whose special toy it is, and that person has control over it, right? Because a child needs to know, what's the structure here? What's the rules? The rest of the toys are for sharing. And what happens is the person who has the toy first gets to have their turn with it until they're done with it, and then they can share it with someone else, right? And often what I find is when we take the pressure away to really quickly share things, kids will just be naturally done with a toy, and then their sibling will come and play with it. And then if they're done with it, aka they've left it on the floor, they're not playing with it, they're on to the next thing, their sibling comes and takes it, then it's the sibling's turn with the toy. And they get to play with it until they're done with it. And so it's actually not about like timed turns, like you get it for 1 minute, then you get it for 1 minute. And this sounds really counterintuitive to people because they're like, well, my kid's going to hold on to it all day. Maybe like the first day they hold on to it all day. But eventually what I do find with a turn taking system like this is that eventually it doesn't feel as frantic to hold on to it because they know a turn will come back up. And if the child does play with it all day, then in the morning, it's the next person's turn.
So, sorry, when does it make sense to have turn taking where it's timed, right? Because last night you literally set a time for the kids to use that little cart outside. Like we have this little...
Right. That's a little different than yeah. Okay. So we have this little, it's like a car.
Yeah, kind of whatever. I don't know.
One of those little cars that you just play with in your driveway. That's different. We only have one of them and it's very novel. It's brand new. The kids all want to play with it. So a timed approach can be okay. But what I'm not doing is expecting the kids to just share. I'm not just saying, okay, share it.
No, maybe I misunderstood what you were saying because I thought you were saying not to do timed turns.
I think a timed turn taking can work if the parent's in charge of it. But if you're expecting your kids to know what 5 minutes is and then give it to the next sibling and you're not a part of that process.
Even if you use, I don't know, like your phone timer, they're not necessarily going to want to give it up after 2 minutes of playing with it.
Yeah. Well, and that's okay. Right? I don't know. I feel like... I like the turn taking for just basic everyday things, right? Like everyday toys that are in your house. Nothing's novel. It's all been there forever. The kids know, okay, I had it first, therefore I get to play with it. When I'm over it, my sibling will play with it. That's what I implemented very early on and actually has been really effective. Now, sometimes the kids will come to me and they both want the same toy. The first question I ask them is, okay, do you think you guys can figure this out on your own? Sometimes they talk amongst themselves and they will decide, I think I'll have it for 2 minutes, then she'll have it for 2 minutes and we'll switch.
The older two can do that. And
our older two kids will do that.
They know how to set timers on our HomePod. So all of a sudden we hear them yelling at Siri to start a timer or something like that.
So I actually like to, if they're a little bit older, throw it back on the kids and be like, well, what do you think a solution could be? Our girls actually, they'll figure that out and they'll set the timer for themselves. They're both also at the age where they're developing their logical brains, like they're 5 and 8. And we've done this so many times with them and they figure it out. And I say, okay, that's fine. Do whatever you want to do. You guys make your decision about how you want to share the toy. They'll set the timer up on the HomePod. And they'll do it themselves, which people
Don't come complaining to me if it doesn't work.
Yeah, well, kind of is the vibe.
Not really, but
I like to not be a referee for my kids. And so anytime I can, I try and help them solve their own issues. Like the amount of times when they were little that I would say, okay, I see two kids in front of me. You're both crying over the same toy. Let's try and figure out what a solution could be. And I try and get them to come up with the solution. I've done that countless times, and now they can pretty much figure it out on their own. We'll have friends over, they're like, what have you done? Like, how do your kids just figure that out? But it's been repeated exposures to me saying, I have two kids in front of me. They're both having a hard time. They both want the same toy. I want you guys to try and figure it out. So I like to step out of the role of referee as much as I possibly can.
Okay. So in the research I was reading, and I'm going to go back to the original email from Ashley, the 2-year-old and 4-year-old. And we'll just even start out with just one of each. The research seemed at least to suggest that parents should act as interpreters for the siblings, translating the 2-year-old's needs to the 4-year-old and vice versa. Yeah. So is that not kind of like acting like like you're saying you're just verbalizing what each of them needs and what they're feeling, but you're not, as a referee, you mean instead you would be like, okay, I'm going to set the timer and I'm going to do this. And you're trying to say that, I mean, at 2 and 4, they're probably not able to actually referee their own issue that they're facing.
So I'll tell you what I do. Okay, so this has happened to me. Let's say I have one 2-year-old and one 4-year-old, and they come to me and they're fighting over a Barbie, let's just say. What I do is I slow my reaction down, right? So I'm not in there. Like when I'm picturing referee, I'm picturing like I'm racing over to the living room, like blowing the whistle, being like, stop, no more fighting. You get the toy and you don't get the toy and it's done, you know? For the most part, I kind of wait unless they're like really at each other for them to come to me to tell me what's been going on. Because sometimes if you just wait long enough and they're not physically hurting each other, that's very different. Sometimes they'll sort it out on their own. Like I think sometimes parents race in way too quick and we don't actually give our kids time to figure it out on their own. And sometimes figuring it out is just like, oh, okay, well, you know, I'm over it and move on to the next toy, right? So first off, I never race in. Second, when they do come to me, I just give them both a chance to say exactly what they're feeling. You know, I usually put my hand on like both of the kids. I'm like, okay, you start. Tell me exactly what happened, what you're thinking. Oh, she took my toy and I had it first. Da, 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 da. Okay, she took your toy. You had it first. Totally get it. You. I actually had it first. Da, 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 da. Okay, you think you actually had it first. And then I'll just narrate what happened. She thinks she had it first. You think you had it first. At the end of the day, you both want the same toy. What can we do? And I always find that just narrating and being really slow about it kind of slows the kids down a little bit. And then I throw it back to them. And then sometimes they're like, well, I want it. Like, okay, well, what we know is both kids can't have it at the same time. Unless, let's say, to go back to the turn taking, unless it truly is like so-and-so had it first, the other kid just wants it. Then I reiterate the rule. Well, you know the rules. Whoever had it first is the one who gets to play with it. So give it back to your sister. When she's done, it'll be your turn. Done. Because that's the rule. But if it's murky, then it's like, okay, so what do you think we can do next? Try and get some ideas going. Maybe I'll throw out a couple ideas and then we'll land on something and then that's what we do next. But what I try really hard not to do is just come in and get them both in trouble and get mad at them both and tell them to just share it. And like,
yeah, I get that part of it. My issue with what you're saying, though, is that doesn't seem realistic for maybe partially for a 4-year-old.
For a 2-year-old.
Depending on what stage of development they're at in the 4-year range. But the 2-year-old is not going to understand that, and they're going to be crying no matter what. They're going to be clinging for dear life onto this thing that they want so badly. Like even our 3-year-old, she still kind of does that. That sounds like a great idea in theory, but what about in practice? Like what, are you still doing that even though the 2-year-old is bawling?
Well, again, so it goes back to, and you can totally tell me if you don't think this is realistic. This is what I do with the girls. If the rule is whoever had it first gets to play, a lot of the time that just resolves it right then and there, right?
No, I know that. Like that's what I would hold that as, okay, our middle daughter had it. Our youngest is trying to get it from her. We have to take the youngest away. She's very upset, but that's okay. That's how it goes in our family. Eventually she'll get it. Most of the time she completely forgets that she even wanted that toy.
2 seconds later, she's on to the next
but
thing.
I don't know. Like I can understand potentially being an interpreter for them, just helping them understand each other's needs and kind of narrating the situation a bit to them to help them understand. But I definitely doubt that a 2-year-old and kind of doubt that a 4-year-old, when they're emotional, are going to be able to comprehend any of what you're saying.
Yeah, I think it's a good point, but I still think it's a good foundation for understanding the thought process behind the emotions that they're feeling, right? I think with anything, we're always narrating, you're crying right now. Your sister took your toy. It's really hard, because we're trying to give them the words to eventually say so that they don't just both come to us crying.
Yeah.
So I think whether or not they fully comprehend it, I still think it's good practice. And it's not over talking. It's just saying like a simple sentence or something like that, right? I still think it's good practice, even if they don't fully comprehend it yet. And I do think it's, in terms of our own children, significantly help them now have the words to communicate what they feel to each other.
Now, do you think this narrating ever ends up becoming problematic enabling of, let's say, the young? Like, I can see it being sort of the default for our youngest child. Like, she's the one that has the tantrums now. So kind of defaulting to just being like, okay, why don't you girls just give the toy to her? She's going to forget about it in a minute. And then,
I mean, we've definitely said that.
yeah, I know we have said that.
But I do think it's enabling. Yes, I agree that it's enabling. And we've definitely done that.
Yeah. Well,
Because
that's why I ask.
Because sometimes our 3-year-old's in a stage right now. So a lot of meltdowns happening. And sometimes we just know, okay, well, if you just give her the Barbie, in 2 seconds, she'll be over it and then you can play with it. And that's pretty much always what happens. But what we are doing is actually reinforcing the bigger meltdown that I have over it, the more likely mom and dad are just to give me the thing. So we're actually not really doing something healthy when we do that. It's better for us to be like, you know what? The rule is that whoever had it first gets to play with it. So we're going to give it to your sister. And when the time comes, then it'll be your turn. And just help her with that disappointment. That would be healthier.
I don't know if this is right or wrong, but with our oldest, I've sort of tried to help her with the strategic thinking a bit, in terms of like, your youngest sister gets upset if she's desperate and just absolutely pissed off. Just give it to her, but then find something else and just be really interested in playing with that. And she'll probably want that instead. And you'd be like, oh, I'll trade you. So I don't know if that's a great thing to teach her, but it's...
I don't know how I feel about that, but I understand the logic.
I'm trying to teach her to be a problem solver and strategic, right?
I don't like... I don't know. I just don't know.
You have to think on it for a second.
I have to think about it. I don't want to say yes or no. But, and again, this is where, like, literally at the end of the day, I get kind of exhausted by these discussions sometimes, because I feel like it's just like, we feel like we need this so specific plan and we do it every time. And it's just like,
You need a script. You need a step-by-step plan.
I don't know. I just like to think of my kids' perspectives, try and imagine being them. Okay, what would make sense and what feels like the fairest thing for both of these kids in this moment? And then I just do that thing. I really try to not overanalyze the sibling struggles. And I know at the end of the day, sibling relationships are healthiest when we have the healthiest relationships with each child individually, right? They're not competing for our love. They're not competing with our attention. Sorry.
I was actually planning on skipping that question anyway, because I figured that's in every episode about relationship is important.
Think that's so important. Parents are like, why are my kids fighting so much? But we forget that actually a lot of the time they're just competing for our attention.
Yeah.
And the sibling fights actually have more to do with the unique relationship we have with each child and the jealousy that they have over their siblings' relationships with us versus like the problems with each other.
Okay, well, I'll ask that question anyway. So you said, and the research shows that one-on-one time is essential for reducing sibling rivalry. Mm-hmm. That's just, the research seemed to suggest that throughout. But what about single parents, families with multiple children, or those with limited time resources? So busy parents, shift work, whatever. Are we then creating guilt for parents who can't achieve this ideal? And what evidence do we have that brief, focused attention is actually better than quality family time altogether?
I mean, there's always the ideal. I feel like we've talked about this too. There's always the ideal, and then we do what we can, within it. There's seasons where you can't have special dates with each child, and that's fine. But like, even the way I'm describing it to you, where you have 2 children coming to you and they're both crying, and you take time to hear both of their stories. That helps. I look both of them in the eyes. I hold both of their hands and let them both tell me their story. Because often what happens is like, you have your one quote unquote trouble child who's always like stirring the pot a little bit. They just get in trouble every time. And the other 2 kids look like saints or whatever. So then the trouble child just ends up stirring up more conflict in order to get more attention or connection, right? So even in the way you're responding, letting everyone have a chance to talk, not labeling one kid as the bad kid. Even if you are a working parent and you only have a couple hours with your kids every night, can you give them a smile, a special wink while they're playing? Can you give them a quick little shoulder rub or a kiss on the cheek or say, hey, I thought of you at work today, right? It doesn't have to be this crazy long time.
Yeah.
It's just intention and trying to split that intentional time between the kids in a way that's fair. Even if the one kid is being a little more trouble than the others, that kid probably actually needs that time a little bit more even.
Right.
Friends, we have exciting news. The Anger course is now available. This course was created for parents of kids who would be labeled as angry, strong-willed, sensitive, or explosive. It's meant for kids ages 3 to 9 years old. Inside the course, you're going to find 35 video lessons, all between 1 and 4 minutes long, really easy to digest, covering everything from your triggers, how you view anger, of course, your childhood experiences, to what anger is and why it presents the way it does, and how even sensitivity plays into it. And then you'll finish it off with some scenarios and really practical tools. The whole thing's only an hour and a half long because we know you're busy. We can't wait to support you. Head to the link in the show notes to grab the Anger course right now.
So you work with many families, or you have worked with many families as a therapist. I was reading that encouraging 4-year-olds, because we're again going back to Ashley's situation here, it suggests encouraging 4-year-olds to be big helpers with their younger siblings. And apparently that helps them at least have a bit more patience. But in your experience, how do you distinguish between fostering these healthy leadership skills and inadvertently creating parentification that could burden the older children?
I know, it's such a balance, right?
Because even with our oldest,
I worry about that with her sometimes. Well, I think about it with her because she is just like such a big sister, right? And she loves being a big sister now. And I never want her to feel like she's the parent. It's good to give kids responsibility within the home. And actually, I found for her, she was getting so annoyed with her sister. She said she didn't like or feel connected with her one sister for a while. But explaining to her how her sister's brain worked and how she's only little and this is what little kids do and they have these tantrums and you're older so you don't act like that anymore. You know, explaining all that to her actually really helped her, I think, bond with her sister in a deeper way. And at the same time, she's never in charge of discipline. She's never in charge of co-regulating with her sister, right? So we have to make sure that we aren't giving them parent responsibilities, but we can give them a little bit of responsibility. Like if you have a baby, hey, could you bring me the diapers, right?
what would you define as a parent responsibility?
Co-regulating.
Let's say a 4-year-old helping a 2-year-old.
With their tantrum.
Okay.
Right? You might have a really caring 4-year-old who just wants to give their sibling a hug. And if the sibling agrees to the hug, great. But it's never, hey, I'm cooking dinner. Can you please give your sister hugs and help her feel better so that I can finish cooking dinner? Sure, once in a while. Again, this is why I don't love getting like caught up on rules here. But if that's consistently, you're making your older child do that work, that can lead to, making them a mini parent. And that is not what we're going for. That's not healthy for kids. Or like, hey, your sisters are fighting. Can you go in there and tell them that so-and-so gets the toy because they had it first? And doing that constantly, making them act as the parent is not really a fair responsibility, especially when they're still kids too, right? They should be able to be kids themselves. So we just want to toe that line, but some responsibility like, hey, can you bring me a blanket for the baby? Aw, look at the baby. She loved how you brought the blanket. Like she's looking up at you. She just loves her big sister so much. That's different to me.
Okay, what about the situation like this morning? I asked our oldest to pour cereal for herself and her 2 sisters. Is that too much?
I don't know. I'm not that worried about it.
Okay.
Like if every morning her job is to make her sister cereal and breakfast and then we never make our kids breakfast, then no. But pretty much every single morning I have her breakfast exactly what she wants laid out on the table for her.
It's always laid out perfectly.
So one morning every 3 weeks she has to make the kids breakfast. It's not going to make or break her.
Well, make is a bit strong. It was
pour cereal into a
and
bowl.
Milk
Yeah, exactly.
I was trying to look for research that focused on temperament differences, but I couldn't really find much. So I don't know if I was just looking in the wrong spots between siblings specifically. So while the research focused more heavily on developmental stages, it largely, from what I could find, ignored temperament differences. So in your work as a therapist, how much of sibling conflict do you think stems from children just having different temperaments and that mismatching versus just developmental gaps?
So much. Yeah. It's a huge gap in the research. It's really interesting. Like we haven't.
Well, and again, this is potentially just my own ability to research it.
I have also found this when I've tried to research this in the past, because I did try and research temperament not that long ago in terms of siblings and just couldn't find much. But from my experience as a therapist and as a mom of kids with different temperaments, it's huge. Even neurodiversity within a home, right? You have one kid who's neurodiverse and the other kid isn't. And it can be really hard for the sibling of neurodivergent children to understand, oh, my brother's brain actually works different than mine. And so he's having these huge meltdowns over things that like totally don't bother me whatsoever. It can build frustration if children aren't understanding that their siblings' brains work a little bit different, right?
Right.
So I actually think if you do have a neurodivergent child or a sensitive child, helping kids understand their brains and how every brain thinks a little different, experiences the world a little different, really helps build compassion in the home.
Yeah, I mean, by saying that, though, essentially what we're saying is parents have to understand it first.
Yeah.
They have to understand a bit more about their kids so that they can actually explain
their brain. Yeah.
Explain it to the siblings. Much of the practical advice from all of this research was essentially based on developmental theory, which we like because it is very logical. But there were very few longitudinal outcome studies that I could find. So following siblings over the course of their whole life, or longer terms at least. So how do we know that doing all this work as a parent now is going to help our children and the siblings in our families? How do we know it's going to help them have better relationships in the future? Because I feel like that's a part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to help them have a good relationship with their siblings now. And that's sort of a part of, I don't know, training them to be good at developing relationships later down the line. But how do we know that that actually works?
I think first, we've already talked about this, but the first indicator of a relationship down the line would be the relationship that they have with you, right? And the relationship they have with you and how you treat them and all the siblings teaches kids how to treat each other. The second thing, I think that we forget, sometimes parents are really hands-off with the siblings and like they let them attack each other and say mean things to each other and we just pass it off as like, oh, they're just brothers. I do think parents have to be quite involved, not in terms of like what I was saying before, jumping in and resolving every issue for their kids, but actually helping and being the coach a little bit, right? So instead of like coming in like, you sit over there and you sit over there and you go to timeout, it's more so coaching them through, guiding them through how to actually be in relationship with each other. And that's what I'm talking about. Like when they come to me and I let both kids talk and then I narrate out exactly what happened, helping them understand the dynamics at play in the relationship, right? And then coaching them through, and now what would be an acceptable way? I think we also need to coach kids through things like sibling touch. I've said this to our kids and they're getting really good at it, but like, hey, your sister doesn't want a hug right now. So notice her face, see how she's pulling away from you. I need you to stop hugging her. Like there are certain things that we have to coach our kids through, and they learn that within the sibling relationship so that now they know they can't go and hug their friend if their friend doesn't want it. And they know what the look might be that signals I don't want to hug, right? So I do think that there is a level of involvement in the sibling relationship and a level of like even fostering. Like I like to get our kids on the same team as much as I can. So it's like the two of them in competition against me or something like that. Like even on the way to school, okay, let's see who can spot the dogs first. Like we'll see how many dogs we can spot on the way to school. Like you two see if you can spot them before I see them or something like that, right? So getting them on the same team, getting them to work together as much as possible so that they learn how to be in relationship with each other. But we can't just expect two kids with immature brains to figure that out without some coaching and guidance.
Yeah, I actually like that. The idea of, you were talking about you don't want to be the referee before. I was saying the research was talking about being an interpreter, but I like the concept of
The coach.
the coach.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because we're on the same team and you're trying to hear the perspectives of two different players on your team.
Yeah.
And trying to help them through the conflict that they have. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
and
that.
trying to get them on the same team, like you're saying, I think that works.
Yeah, trying to get them on the same team. We're not working against each other here. We're not in competition. We're a family. We all work together.
Although some families are in competition too. I would say my family, although they try to be on the same team, they're also very competitive with each other.
One thing that I like to say to our kids, though, when they're fighting or they're disagreeing with each other, this sounds kind of woo-woo, but I like to speak their love over them. I know you love your sister, and I know you don't want to hurt her, yet you're hurting her right now. So help me understand what's happening. Instead of, you're so mean. You're always so mean to your sister. Like you act like you hate her. It's just flipping the script a little bit to just always start with reminding them that they love each other, that they're on the same team, and then help me understand how we got here.
Yeah.
And I have said that about a zillion times. And I'll always speak about how the siblings love each other. Like when they were babies, be like, look at her. She's looking at you with like a smile in her eyes. She's so happy that you're here. And then as they get older, it's like, oh, I noticed the way like the littlest sister, she misses you when you go on the bus. Like she always waves to you and she says how much she's going to miss you when you go to school today. I'm always finding these little ways to tell our kids how much the other siblings love each other. And it builds this internal story that I love my siblings love me. And I think that has helped our girls immensely.
Yeah, now I think they started calling each other their sweethearts.
Yeah, now they all call each other sweethearts. But again, it starts with that coaching and that being intentional of the way that we talk to our kids about each other.
So I think to end this episode, I just want to hear from you, based on that message we received from Ashley originally. What advice would you specifically give to her in this situation? She has 2 sets of twins, 2 2-year-olds, 2 4-year-olds. How maybe can she set her expectations differently or do things differently in their house that help build that sibling bond? And
yeah, I think that the same team advice. So when you can you get them to work together as a team? Kids love to work against you, like if it's like a competition or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Like how many sticks can you find? And I'll find sticks too, and you two work against me or whatever. Do some team building activities, see if there's like games that they can play to get like What Time is it, Mr. Wolf, like that kind of game. Sometimes it is about setting up the house where people can have their own little stations. Like I do find if the kids are all together, like crammed in one space, it's easier to fight. But sometimes we all need some space and time away from each other. So maybe it's like one kid's at the table coloring, one's in the bedroom, one's in the living room. Like there's some space there. Having the turn-taking system I talked about, where it's harder at first because you're implementing a new way of doing it, it becomes easy. It's a rule. You're not trying to like make up a different scenario every single time your kids are sharing. So having some structure around the rules and around playing, and then trying to do those winks, those nods, those smiles to make sure that your kids also feel like they have that special attention from you. And then, the expectation of just knowing it's going to be a bit of a chaotic house for a while with kids this age. And as you narrate and coach them through it, eventually they will start to get along and things do get easier. But in this stage, it is chaotic because you have 4 kids under 5. And so give yourself some grace too and know that it's not that your kids are just like so terrible and hate each other. It's just that you have 4 kids under 5, and this is how their brains work.
The brains are, they work in a very specific way and are growing.
Yeah. And of course, there's so much more advice if I was like actually seeing her in session, but those are just some ideas.
Okay. Well, I think this episode was great. It was short but sweet.
Short and sweet. That's how we like it.
Thanks for listening today. We have one more episode that we're going to do with a listener's email. If you have other questions or want us to go through a burning question that you have, let us know. We really appreciate it.
We'd love to help. Talk soon. Hey friends, thank you so much for listening to today's episode. We are glad that you are here. If you enjoyed today's episode and found it interesting, we'd really appreciate it if you'd leave a rating and a review. Scott and I actually sit down together and read them all. A 5-star rating helps us share our podcast and get these important messages out there. Thank you so much for listening, and we can't wait to talk to you again next time.